manager of Hill City, a gapping company. He is going to talk about building a brand with the feedback loop customer in mind. He's going to come up for a 10-minute presentation, and then I'm going to join for some questions. So coming up, Noah.
I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet, feel that hot blood in my body.
Hi. All right, we're working here. So just out of curiosity, by a show of hands, who here had heard of Hill City before today? It's pretty surprising. We still have some work cut out for us, though. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what Hill City is, what we're striving to do, and then we'll talk about how we're basically taking the customer and bringing him further upstream than I think he's used to being, and talking about what that means for us. There we go. All right, so a little bit about Hill City. So we launched about 6 months ago, and I think we launched in a really interesting way. So Hill City was launched under the Gap Inc. umbrella of brands. So Hill City sits alongside brands like Athleta, Banana Republic, Intermix, and others. However, we're vastly different from those brands for a couple of different reasons. I think if you think about the way Hill City started, it was a really small group of us, less than 10, that essentially worked in secret for over a year building the brand, and we essentially were building a passion brand. We took a really introspective approach. We were building a brand for ourselves, first and foremost. Since launching, our team has grown to about 15 to 20 people, and we sort of act as this startup within the Gap Inc. family of brands. So high performance redefined. This is our mission. This is our mantra. It's what we're striving to do. We're essentially a men's premium high performance brand. I think the reality is we're one of what feels like 100 of them, but this is how we want to cut through differently. I talked about this being an introspective approach. This is what we wished existed in the world, was a brand that redefined what high performance means. So if I take a step back and think about how high performance is typically conveyed today, it's hyper masculine, it's ultra competitive, it's like a jacked up 23-year-old that's really focused on a single sport. And that didn't resonate with us. That's not the way we see performance. We don't see performance being isolated in sport or business. We see it being really multifaceted. We see it as being a part of our everyday. At the same time, you think about what performance typically means from an apparel standpoint, and how it's typically coming across. It's really techy. It's really slinky. It's bright colors. It's heavily branded, maybe a little bit over detailed. And that didn't work for us either. We wanted apparel, we wanted clothes that didn't peg us as a guy that's going to or from a gym. We had a real beef with the idea of that performance and style were in competition with one another, and that you had to choose one or the other. Which takes us to the sort of formula we've been following. It's three-part. There's these three components, and they're all equally weighted. So there's a performance component, there's a style component, and then there's a sustainability component. I'll take you through those. So built for the extreme is obviously our performance component. Jeff Johnson is one of our earliest wear testers, is wearing our everyday pants, the same pant that I'm wearing right now, and it looks like a pant you would wear every day, hence the name, but it's a lot more than that. It's extremely technical. It has a little bit of stretch. It has a patent-pending adaptive waistband that stretches with you as you move, but doesn't look like a stretch waistband. It's water and stain repellent on the fabric face, and it's moisture wicking on the inside. Ime, another one of our really early wear testers, is actually wearing the exact same pant. So this is our sort of style component, designed for the everyday. Our design ethos are about minimalism, they're about simplicity, it's about performance that is felt but that's not seen. We don't want you to look like you were just climbing a rock, like you were just bouldering like Jeff was in the previous slide. We think a lot about stripping things away. It's not about adding, it's about editing for us for a couple of different reasons. I think one of them is we're striving for versatility. We want to have fewer things that are better, that last longer, and that do more. And we don't want guys to grow out of this brand. We don't want you to sort of age out of Hill City. And then the third component, I think this is one that's really important to us as a group, and as part of that passion play that I talked about earlier, is source responsibly. So today, about 40% of our materials are sustainable, meaning that they're post-consumer recycled synthetics, or they're naturals like organic cottons or non-mules merinos. But I think sustainability goes a lot further than that. It's a little bit what I talked about before. It's about high quality stuff that will last a really long time. I mean, simply put, we want a guy's closet to be smaller and to turn over less frequently. Which takes us to what I'm really supposed to be talking about. That was my pitch to sell a few shorts and t-shirts. So we are wear testers, or we are testers, is sort of a hook that we started with. So when we launched, actually about a month before we launched, we announced the brand was going to launch. We threw up a splash page and it was something like along the lines of, sign up to be a wear tester. We'll give you some free product in return for your feedback. We thought we would get a couple hundred people that were interested, and we were really overwhelmed with the response. We had 30,000 people apply. We stopped taking applicants. We shut the program down, and admittedly, there were some bogus applications in there. There were some people that just wanted free stuff. We kind of expected that, but so it wasn't a pure 30,000. But within there were like this really core group of guys that saw the world the same way that we saw it, that had some of the same pain points in apparel, that didn't like the way that they were being, spoken to by these performance brands today. And around them, we're formed this wear tester group of 500 plus guys that are giving us feedback on a very regular basis. And if I take a step back here, the genesis of the wear tester program was kind of two-part. One part was we started getting these design prototypes back, and we were wearing them ourselves. We were giving them to friends and family, and we were really surprised by the feedback we were getting. Not in the actual what the feedback was so much. It was more in how much feedback we were getting. We brought out the gearhead nature in a lot of guys. Guys were geeking out over what we were giving them, and I think they liked the idea of feeling a part of contributing as opposed to being pushed product or told what to buy. And so there was something there. At the same time, we kept being asked, well, what's your influencer strategy? You're going to be a direct consumer brand. You have a digital only presence. Who are the influencers you're going to work with? And I think we had a hard time with that for a couple of different reasons. I think, on a personal level, we were well, that seems so inauthentic. I don't trust influencers. But at the same time, what we were recognizing was we each had a friend in our group that had worn every gym short brand there was and could tell us the best one to buy. We each had a friend in our group that had a really cool sense of style and was putting outfits together in this awesome way. And we would never tell him that. We would never admit that to him. But we looked up. We looked at that guy and thought, man, he's really cool. And these weren't guys with big networks. They weren't traditional influencers, but they had a lot of influence. They were really influential on us and on their peer groups. They had impact. And so I think what we were thinking is how can we kind of kill two birds with one stone here? And that's where the Wear Tester program kind of began. And you're seeing, on the screen some of the UGC that these guys have been creating. That wasn't something we asked them to do. We were really simple and straightforward in our approach. We were asking for feedback. We were hoping for them, we were hoping they were going to help us, see patterns in what we were doing right and see patterns in what we were doing wrong as it relates to product, and help us build version 2.0 of a lot of these products. But what they ended up doing for us was advocating for the brand. They became evangelists for us. They started creating content for us. If I think forward, it's evolved even further. So to date, we've told 4 different stories of our top tier of wear testers. We have a 5th one that will be coming out in the next month or so. And these are multi-part. I think the idea here is going back to how do we show people what redefined high performance looks like. These are all guys that are really emblematic of what we're trying to do as a brand, and they represent Hill City in a really pure way. You know, I use Jeff as an example, the rock climber. You know, we'd say, oh, well, you're a photographer. He'd say, what are you talking about? I'm a photographer. He's like, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a rock climber, I'm a surfer, I'm a writer. I'm not just a photographer, I'm an adventurer. It's like every guy that was thematic. They saw themselves as so much more, and I think that's the way we want to see Hill City. And with these top tier wear testers, you know, we're in the process of evolving it a click deeper. So, you know, essentially right now what we're doing is we're having them field test product, we're taking their feedback, and it kind of stops there as we develop version 2.0. And as it's evolving, what's happening is we're giving them, they're wear testing our product, they're beating the hell out of it, they're giving us feedback, and we're starting to co-create and co-design products with them. And the last thing I note, I'm gonna like a few seconds over time here, is that we recently shifted to a community-based cohort. So we've moved onto Facebook groups, and it's been really astonishing to see the way these guys are interacting with one another, giving tips, recommendations. And we really accidentally built this community of guys.
Awesome, thanks, Noah. That's
Yeah.
Great, well, let's dig into a little bit of that strategy that you just talked about, because I feel like this is a really natural evolution of how brands are working with influencers. It's not just about content and promotion, it's about actually collaborating on product design. And so, like you mentioned, like version 2.0, how do you plan to really take that feedback, put it into the product design process? Like what has to happen on the internal team, on your back end, to make sure that you're not just hearing what these people are saying, you're acting on it?
Yeah, so I think there's two different planes that we're working on. There is the version 2.0, which is the much easier one to do. So we launch our everyday train tee, and then like 50 to 80 guys are wear testing it, giving us feedback. And then as we go to develop version 2.0 of that, we're incorporating that feedback. And like there have been some really clear patterns in the feedback.
Right.
And that's kind of the easy part. I think the more challenging part is building like the infrastructure, the logistics around creating version 1.0 from scratch, which is what we're doing. So we're in the process of building a super lightweight running short with an ultra runner. But it requires us pulling everything a little bit further up, and it requires us actually seeding the prototype samples with that guy. It involves him being in our office. It involves like a more of an iterative approach to get there. And I think what I would love to see with time, I think what we expect to see is that we'll go from less of this 2.0 approach to more of a 1.0 approach as we launch the product.
And in terms of how you communicate with these people, you mentioned Facebook groups. Like what channels and platforms have been best to see that feedback?
So it's multi-channel. I think the way we launched was via chatbot. So it was a one-to-one communication channel.